The fearless, innocent girl tamed the most dangerous CEO. Now he is obsessed and only hers. Hi, my precious and cherished family. Welcome back to Mr. Peter's Stories. How my heart sings with pure joy to welcome you back to our sacred gathering at the home of the Peter Stories family, where love flows like a gentle river connecting all our souls. Seeing your beautiful spirits gathered here fills me with a warmth that could light up the darkest night. Before we weave today's tapestry of love, let us join our hearts in prayer. Dearest Heaven's Light, we thank you for blessing us with this magical moment where hearts beat as one. Let your divine love cascade through our spirits as we share stories that touch the deepest chambers of our souls. May every word we speak be a spark of hope, igniting joy in the gardens of each precious heart present. Amen. My beloved family, my heart still dances with the golden memories of Valentine's Day. When I beheld my darling Binta in her flowing white gown, time stood still. She was radiant with an ethereal beauty that surpassed even that magical moment 30 years ago when love first bloomed in my heart. The way love's light sparkled in her eyes reminded me that true love only grows more precious with each passing season. Would you allow me to share the enchanted tale of how destiny brought Binta and me together? How love transformed a shy man's whispered dreams into the courage to pursue an angel who walked on earth. Every precious moment is etched in the canvas of my heart with colors of pure joy. Please leave a gentle whisper of yes if you wish to hear our love story unfold. And tell me, are you still wrapped in the warm embrace of our family with Mr. Peter? How did love paint your Valentine's Day with its magical brush? Share with us the sweet surprises that made your heart flutter, for in this family every joy shared becomes a treasure for all. Shall we open the golden gates to our hearts and let today's story of love begin to bloom? With boundless love and tender care, Mr. Peter Stories. The morning sun cast long shadows across the polished marble floors of Levi Enterprises' executive suite, its golden rays barely warming the Arctic atmosphere that surrounded Byron Levi. At 32, he commanded an empire that stretched across continents, yet the victory felt hollow in the emptiness of his penthouse office. Standing at the floor-to-ceiling windows, Byron watched the city below with steel-grey eyes that had earned him the nickname Ice King. His reflection stared back at him, impeccable in a custom charcoal suit that cost more than most people's monthly salary, dark hair perfectly styled, jawline sharp enough to cut glass. Power emanated from every inch of his 6'2" frame. The whispers of employees scattered like leaves when he walked through the halls. Some called him ruthless, others called him brilliant. All feared him. The world saw what he wanted them to see, a man carved from marble, untouchable and unbreakable. Marcus, his executive assistant of 5 years, appeared silently at his door. "Mr. Levi, your 9 a.m. appointment has arrived." Byron didn't turn. "Send them in." His voice carried the chill of a winter storm. The door opened, and the click of heels against marble broke the silence. Something in the rhythm made him turn, a confidence in those steps that few dared to display in his presence. Time stopped. Florrie Winter stood in his doorway, and for the first time in years, Byron felt something crack in his carefully constructed walls. She wore a crisp white blazer that complemented her honey-gold skin, her dark curls falling in perfect waves around a face that belonged in Renaissance paintings. But it was her eyes that caught him, amber flecked with gold, holding a quiet fire that challenged his ice. "Mr. Levi," she said, her voice rich and melodious, "I'm here about the Henderson merger." He gestured to the chair across from his desk, watching as she moved with natural grace. "Ms. Winter, your reputation precedes you. As does yours." A hint of amusement colored her tone. She placed a leather portfolio on his desk, her manicured fingers elegant against the dark surface. "Tell me what you found." He remained standing, using height to his advantage as he always did. Florrie met his gaze without flinching. Inconsistencies, the kind that could sink both our companies if we don't address them immediately. Byron moved closer, ostensibly to look at the document she was spreading across his desk. The subtle scent of jasmine and vanilla teased his senses. "Explain." She stood, eliminating the height advantage, and pointed to a series of numbers. Her proximity sent an unfamiliar jolt through his system. "These transactions don't match the reported earnings. Someone's hiding millions in offshore accounts." Her passion for the work showed in every gesture, every word. It awakened something in him, a recognition of kindred spirit perhaps, or something more dangerous. "How long have you been investigating this?" he asked, his voice lower than usual. 3 weeks. She turned to face him, and suddenly they were inches apart. "I don't sleep when something feels wrong." The air between them crackled with unspoken tension. Byron studied her face, noting the intelligence in her eyes, the determination in the set of her jaw, the softness of her lips. He stepped back abruptly. "We'll need to work closely on this." A smile played at the corners of her mouth. "Can you handle that, Mr. Levi?" The challenge in her voice stirred something primal in him. "The question is, Ms. Winter, can you?" She gathered her documents with deliberate slowness. "I guess we'll find out." As she moved toward the door, she paused. "One more thing, Mr. Levi." "Yes." "The Ice King reputation?" "I've worked with Winter before. It doesn't scare me." The door closed behind her, leaving Byron standing in an office that suddenly felt too warm. He loosened his tie, a gesture he hadn't made in years. Marcus appeared with a stack of papers. "Sir, the board is waiting for your decision on the Asian expansion." Byron turned back to the windows, seeing not the city, but the fire in Florrie's eyes. "Cancel my afternoon appointments, all of them, and get me everything we have on the Henderson merger." "Yes, sir." Marcus hesitated. "And Ms. Winter? Give her full security clearance. She'll be working directly with me on this." After Marcus left, Byron pressed his forehead against the cool glass. For the first time since building his empire, he felt his control slipping. One meeting with Florrie Winter had melted more of his defenses than anyone had in years. The thought should have terrified him. Instead, he felt more alive than he had in decades. He pulled out his phone and typed a message to his private investigator. "Full background check on Florrie Winter. Everything. Now." The response came quickly. "Sir, we already did when she was hired for the merger team. She's clean, brilliant academic record, stellar career trajectory. No scandals, no weaknesses to exploit." Byron deleted the messages. Of course, she was perfect. The universe wouldn't send anything less to challenge him. Walking to his private bar, he poured himself 2 fingers of scotch, something he never did during working hours. The liquid burned down his throat, but it didn't compare to the fire Florrie had ignited in his veins. The rest of the day passed in a blur of meetings and decisions, but his mind kept returning to her. The way she stood her ground, the grace in her movements, the fearlessness in her eyes. As night fell over the city, Byron remained in his office, her files spread across his desk. Harvard Business School with honors. 5 years at a top consulting firm, countless successful projects. But the papers told him nothing about the electricity he'd felt in her presence. His phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. The Henderson numbers get worse after hours. Still awake? Despite himself, he smiled. Always. "Good, I'll be there in 20 minutes. Hope you like Thai food." Byron stared at his phone, realizing he'd just smiled for the first time in months. Running his fingers through his hair, he caught his reflection in the window. The Ice King looked different somehow. Less frozen, more human. The thought should have angered him. Instead, he found himself watching the clock, counting the minutes until Florrie Winter would walk back through his door and challenge everything he thought he knew about himself. 20 minutes suddenly felt like an eternity. The night stretched ahead, promising revelations both professional and personal. Byron Levi, the man who controlled everything, was about to learn that some forces of nature couldn't be contained, and that sometimes surrendering control could be the most powerful move of all. As he waited, he realized that Florrie Winter hadn't just arrived for a merger meeting. She'd walked into his life like a summer storm, about to wash away years of carefully constructed frost with the warmth of her presence. The Ice King's reign was about to face its greatest challenge, and deep down, in places he'd forgotten existed, Byron Levi welcomed the thaw. Chapter 2. The Spark. The Thai food containers sat forgotten on Byron's desk as midnight approached. The city lights twinkled below like earthbound stars, casting a soft glow through the windows of his penthouse office. Florrie had removed her blazer hours ago, revealing a silk blouse that caught the light with every movement. Her curls had loosened throughout the evening, framing her face in a way that made it difficult for Byron to focus on the documents before them. "Look at this pattern," Florrie said, leaning across his desk to point at a spreadsheet. The scent of jasmine enveloped him again, making his pulse quicken. The discrepancies always appear 3 days after each major acquisition. Byron moved closer, ostensibly to examine the numbers. Someone systematic about their deception. "Too systematic," Florrie replied, turning to face him. Their proximity sent electricity through the air between them. "That's how I caught it. Real business is messier." Her insight struck him. Most people tried to impose perfect order on chaos. Florrie understood that imperfection could be a sign of authenticity, just as her presence had begun to crack his own too-perfect facade. "You see things differently," he murmured, his voice low and intimate in the quiet office. She met his gaze, her amber eyes reflecting the city lights. "Is that a compliment or a criticism, Mr. Levi?" "Byron," he corrected automatically, surprising himself. "When we're alone, call me Byron." A smile played at the corners of her mouth. "Careful. People might think you're human after all." He should have been offended. Instead, he found himself fighting back a smile of his own. "Your concerns about my humanity have been noted, Ms. Winter. Florrie," she countered, her voice softening, "if we're breaking down walls, we might as well be thorough about it." The word thorough from her lips sent his imagination down dangerous paths. Byron turned away, walking to his private bar. "Drink!" "Water, please. I need to keep my head clear around you." The admission hung in the air between them, charged with possibility. Byron brought her a crystal glass of water, their fingers brushing during the exchange. The contact sent sparks through his system. Florrie took a sip, then set the glass down decisively. "We should focus on the Henderson files." Agreed. But neither of them moved toward the documents. She stood walking to the windows, the city spread out below them like a jeweled carpet. "It's beautiful up here." "Lonely," Byron found himself saying, the word escaping before he could stop it. Florrie turned to look at him, really look at him, as if seeing past every barrier he'd built. "It doesn't have to be." The space between them seemed to shrink, though neither had moved. Byron felt his carefully constructed control beginning to slip. "Florrie..." "I know," she said softly. "This is complicated. The merger, our positions, your reputation, my career. Everything says we should keep our distance. But..." He took a step closer. "But I've never been good at doing what I should." She met him halfway, close enough that he could see the flecks of gold in her eyes. "Have you?" Byron reached out, his fingers ghosting along her jawline. Her skin was silk beneath his touch. "I've always done exactly what I should, until now." The first kiss was gentle, a question more than a demand. Florrie's response was anything but hesitant. Her hands slid up his chest to tangle in his hair, drawing him closer. Byron groaned, deepening the kiss as years of control shattered in an instant. She tasted like mint and possibilities, her body fitting against his as if designed for this moment. His hand spanned her waist, feeling the heat of her through the silk blouse. Every nerve ending came alive, singing with a desire he'd forgotten he could feel. Florrie pulled back first, her breathing uneven. "This changes everything." "Everything was already changing," Byron replied, his voice rough. "From the moment you walked into my office." She traced his lips with her finger, the simple touch sending shivers down his spine. "The Ice King melts, after all. Only for you." The words surprised him with their truth. A knock at the door made them spring apart. Marcus's voice came through. "Mr. Levi, the Tokyo office is on the line about the emergency board meeting." Byron ran a hand through his disheveled hair. 5 minutes, Marcus." When the footsteps faded, Florrie was already gathering her things, her movements precise but hurried. "We should have dinner with me," Byron said suddenly. "Tomorrow night. Away from the office, away from Henderson, away from everything." She paused, her blazer half on. "That's not a good idea." "I know." He moved closer, drawn to her like a moth to flame. "Have dinner with me anyway." Florrie looked up at him, conflict clear in her eyes. "You don't date employees." "I don't date anyone," he corrected, "but rules exist to be broken." A smile tugged at her lips. "Says the man who built an empire on control and protocol. Says the woman who made me want to burn the rule book." He traced her cheekbone with his thumb. "Tomorrow night, 8 o'clock." She caught his hand, pressing a kiss to his palm that sent fire through his veins. "Pick me up at 7:30. I know a place." With that, she was gone, leaving behind only the lingering scent of jasmine and the memory of her touch. Byron stood in his office, his body humming with an energy he'd forgotten he could feel. The phone rang again, Tokyo waiting for their CEO. Byron straightened his tie, trying to force himself back into the role of Ice King, but the frost wouldn't come. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Florrie's smile, felt her lips against his. Marcus appeared in the doorway. "Sir, Tokyo is getting impatient." "Handle it," Byron said, making a decision. "Tell them I'll review their concerns in the morning. But, sir, the protocol is changing." Byron gathered the Henderson files, his mind already on tomorrow night. Everything is changing. After Marcus left, Byron touched his lips, still feeling the ghost of Florrie's kiss. The Ice King's reputation had taken decades to build. She'd melted his defenses in a matter of hours. The thought should have terrified him. Instead, he felt more alive than he had in years. Tomorrow couldn't come soon enough. As he prepared to leave the office, Byron caught his reflection in the window. His hair was mussed, his tie askew, his eyes alive with an inner fire that had been missing for too long. He looked nothing like the careful, controlled CEO who had started the day. He looked like a man awakening from a long winter, ready to embrace the spring. The night air was cool as he walked to his waiting car, but Byron barely noticed. His mind was filled with the taste of Florrie's lips, the sound of her laugh, the way she challenged him without fear. For the first time in years, he looked forward to tomorrow, not for the deals he would close or the power he would wield, but for the simple promise of seeing her again. The Ice King was thawing, and nothing would ever be the same. As his driver navigated the city streets, Byron's phone buzzed with a message from Florrie. "Sweet dreams, Ice King. Tomorrow I'll show you how the other half lives." He smiled, something he'd done more in the past few hours than in the past few years. "I'm looking forward to the education." Her response came quickly. "Good, because once you step into my world, there's no going back." Byron leaned back in his seat, his heart racing with anticipation. "I don't want to go back," he typed. "I want to go forward, with you." The three dots appeared and disappeared several times before her final message came through. "Then prepare yourself, Byron Levi. Tomorrow we break all the rules." The promise in those words carried him through the night, his dreams filled with amber eyes and jasmine perfume, with kisses that melted ice and touches that burned like fire. Tomorrow couldn't come soon enough. The Ice King was ready to burn. Chapter 3. Late Nights and Early Revelations. The restaurant Florrie chose was nothing like the elite establishments Byron frequented. Tucked away in a quiet neighborhood, Sophia's kitchen glowed with warm light and the aroma of home-cooked Mediterranean food. Byron had driven them there in his Aston Martin, foregoing his usual driver for privacy. Florrie wore a deep burgundy dress that made his mouth go dry, the silk clinging to her curves in ways that tested his legendary control. Her curls were loose tonight, falling past her shoulders in a cascade that caught the golden restaurant lights. "Not what you expected?" she asked as they were led to a corner table, intimate and away from prying eyes. "You never are," he replied honestly, pulling out her chair. The owner, Sophia herself, approached their table with a warm smile. "Florrie, tesoro, and you brought someone special." Byron watched in fascination as Florrie embraced the older woman, speaking rapid Italian that surprised him. The language flowed from her lips like music, adding another layer to her mystique. "I didn't know you spoke Italian," he said after Sophia left with their orders. Florrie's eyes sparkled over her wineglass. "There's a lot you don't know about me, Ice King. I want to learn everything." The intensity in his voice surprised them both. She set down her glass, studying him. "Why me, Byron? You've had countless beautiful women throw themselves at you. What makes me different?" Byron reached across the table, his fingers brushing hers. "You don't throw yourself at anything. You stand your ground. You challenge me. You see past the frost to something I'd forgotten existed." "And what's that?" "The man beneath the empire." He intertwined their fingers. "The heart under the ice." Florrie's thumb traced patterns on his palm, sending shivers up his arm. "Dangerous territory, Mr. CEO. Hearts can be broken. So can empires." He lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. "I'm willing to risk both." The candlelight caught the gold flecks in her eyes as she leaned forward. "Show me." Byron felt his pulse quicken. "Here. Take me home," she whispered. "Show me the man behind the throne." They barely tasted their food, the air between them electric with anticipation. Byron left enough cash to buy the restaurant twice over, earning a knowing smile from Sophia as they hurried out. The drive to his penthouse was torture, every red light an eternity. Florrie's hand rested on his thigh, her touch innocent yet maddening. The scent of her perfume filled the car, making it hard to focus on the road. In the private elevator to his apartment, Byron finally gave in to temptation. He pulled her close, his lips finding hers in a kiss that made his previous control seem like a distant memory. Florrie melted against him, her hands sliding under his jacket to feel the heat of him through his shirt. The elevator doors opened directly into his penthouse, but they barely noticed the panoramic city views. Byron's jacket hit the floor, followed by his tie. Florrie's fingers worked the buttons of his shirt with maddening slowness. "You're killing me," he groaned, as she pressed kisses to each inch of exposed skin. She looked up at him through her lashes, the mighty Byron Levi, undone by a simple touch. "Nothing about you is simple." He tangled his hands in her hair, tilting her face up for another searing kiss. They made their way to his bedroom, leaving a trail of clothing behind. The city lights painted patterns across Florrie's skin as she stepped out of her dress, the burgundy silk pooling at her feet. Byron's breath caught in his throat. "You're beautiful," he whispered, reverent. She moved closer, her heartbeat visible at the base of her throat. "Touch me." Byron traced the curve of her shoulder, down her arm, memorizing every inch. Her skin was silk beneath his fingers, warming at his touch. He could hear her breath quicken, feel the tremors that ran through her body. "I've dreamed of this," he admitted, pressing kisses along her collarbone. "Show me," she breathed, pulling him closer. The rest of their clothes fell away, barriers dropping like the walls around Byron's heart. He lifted her onto his bed, the black silk sheets a stark contrast to her golden skin. Her curls spread across his pillows like a dark halo. "You're sure?" he asked, hovering above her. Florrie pulled him down for a kiss that answered every question. "I've never been more sure of anything." What followed was a symphony of sighs and whispers, of skin against skin and hearts beating in tandem. Byron discovered that Florrie's passion matched his own, her fire meeting his thawing ice in perfect harmony. She arched beneath him, her nails leaving crescents in his shoulders as pleasure overwhelmed them both. As the first light of dawn painted the sky in pastels, they lay tangled in the sheets. Byron traced patterns on Florrie's bare shoulder, unwilling to sleep lest this prove to be a dream. "What are you thinking?" she asked, pressing a kiss to his chest. "That I never want to go back to who I was before you." She propped herself up on an elbow, studying his face. "The Ice King served his purpose. He protected you when you needed protection. But maybe it's time to let him go." Byron tucked a curl behind her ear. "I don't know how to be anyone else." "Yes, you do." She kissed him softly. "You're being him right now. The real Byron Levi, passionate, caring, alive." He pulled her closer, marveling at how perfectly she fit against him. "Stay with me." "I have an early meeting," she reminded him with a smile. "Cancel it." "With the CEO. I hear he's a ruthless taskmaster." Byron rolled them over, pinning her beneath him. "I hear he's becoming more flexible these days." Florrie's laugh turned into a gasp as he kissed his way down her throat. "Byron." "Stay," he murmured against her skin. "The world can wait." And for a few more precious hours it did. They made love again as the sun rose, slower this time, savoring every touch and taste. Byron memorized the sounds she made, the way she said his name, the feel of her hands on his skin. Later, as they shared coffee on his balcony, both dressed in his shirts, reality began to creep back in. The Henderson investigation still loomed. The merger still needed attention. The world was waiting. But something fundamental had changed. The Ice King's crown had melted in the heat of Florrie's passion, revealing the man beneath. Byron knew he could never go back to who he was before this night. Florrie kissed him goodbye at his private elevator, straightening his tie with practiced hands. "Ready to face the world, Mr. CEO." He caught her hands, pressing them to his heart. "Only if you're by my side." "Always," she promised, reaching up for one last kiss. As the elevator doors closed between them, Byron touched his lips, still feeling the ghost of her kiss. The Ice King was gone, replaced by something warmer, something real, and he wouldn't have it any other way. The day stretched ahead, full of meetings and decisions, but Byron's mind kept returning to the night before. To Florrie's skin in the moonlight, to her whispered words of passion, to the way she had seen through every defense, to the heart he'd forgotten he had. The world would have to adjust to this new version of Byron Levi. The frost had melted, replaced by a fire that burned brighter with every thought of Florrie. And somewhere in the building, wearing a fresh suit and carrying the memory of his touches, Florrie was smiling too. They had crossed a line, broken all the rules, and neither of them wanted to go back. The Ice King was dead. Long live the man who had taken his place, the man who had finally learned that true power lay not in control, but in surrender. to love. Chapter 4. The Wall Cracks. The morning after their night together, Byron arrived at the office earlier than usual. The sunrise painted his penthouse office in shades of gold that reminded him of Florrie's skin in the moonlight. His body still hummed with the memory of her touch, making it impossible to focus on the stack of contracts awaiting his signature. Marcus entered with his usual morning coffee, then stopped short. "Sir, are you humming?" Byron hadn't even realized he was making the soft sound. He cleared his throat. "The Tokyo numbers, Marcus." But his assistant remained frozen, staring at something even more shocking than the humming. "Sir, you're smiling." The observation made Byron's smile fade instantly, but the damage was done. His carefully crafted image of the Ice King was showing cracks, and all because of one woman who had melted through his defenses. "The Henderson investigation takes priority today," Byron said, trying to regain his stern demeanor. "Clear my schedule except for the merger team meetings." "Yes, sir." Marcus hesitated at the door. "And shall I have lunch sent up for 2? Byron's sharp look was met with careful neutrality. "That will be all, Marcus." Alone again, Byron walked to the windows, remembering how Florrie had stood here just hours ago, wearing nothing but his shirt and a smile. The memory made his blood heat, his body responding instantly to the thought of her. A knock at his door interrupted his reverie. "Enter." "Good morning, Mr. Levi." Her voice sent electricity down his spine. Byron turned to find Florrie standing in his doorway, looking impeccable in a deep blue suit that made his mouth go dry. Her hair was pulled back in a professional twist, but he could still see the marks his lips had left on her neck, carefully concealed with makeup. "Ms. Winter." His voice was rougher than usual. "You're early." She closed the door behind her, her heels clicking against the marble as she approached his desk. "I had motivation to start the day properly." The double meaning in her words made his pulse quicken. The Henderson files, among other things. She set her portfolio on his desk, then rounded it to stand before him. "You look tired, Mr. CEO. Rough night." Byron caught her wrist, pulling her closer. "The best night of my life." Florrie's professional facade cracked, revealing the passion he'd discovered beneath. "We should maintain boundaries at work." "Should we?" His thumb traced circles on her pulse point, feeling it jump beneath his touch. "Byron!" The warning in her voice was undermined by the way she swayed toward him. He released her, stepping back with effort. "You're right. Professional boundaries." She smoothed her jacket, but her eyes held promises for later. "The team meeting is in an hour. I found something in the Henderson subsidiaries that you need to see first." They managed to focus on work for approximately 10 minutes before Byron caught the scent of her perfume and lost his train of thought entirely. Florrie was pointing at something in the financial reports, but all he could see was the elegant line of her neck, remembering how it tasted. "You're not listening to a word I'm saying," she accused, turning to face him. "I'm trying," he defended, "but you're incredibly distracting." She raised an eyebrow. The great Byron Levi, distracted by a woman? "What would your shareholders say?" He caught her hand, bringing it to his lips. "They'd say I'm finally human." The moment heated quickly, professional boundaries forgotten, as Byron pulled her into his arms. The kiss was electric, charged with all the passion they'd discovered the night before. Florrie's hands slid inside his jacket, remembering exactly how to drive him wild. A knock at the door made them spring apart. Florrie quickly straightened her clothes while Byron tried to slow his racing heart. "Come in," he called, his voice only slightly unsteady. Marcus entered with a stack of reports, his eyes widening slightly at the flush in Florrie's cheeks and the disarray of Byron's tie. "Sir, the merger team is assembling early. They're quite excited about Miss Winter's findings. We'll be right there, Byron said dismissively. After Marcus left, Florrie touched up her lipstick using her phone's camera. This is going to be harder than I thought. Byron watched her, mesmerized by every movement. Worth it, though. She smiled, a private smile that made his heart race. Definitely worth it. Now focus. We have a company to save. The merger team meeting was torture. Byron sat at the head of the conference table, trying to concentrate on spreadsheets and profit projections while Florrie presented her findings. She was brilliant, commanding the room with natural authority that made him fall even harder. Every time she glanced his way, he remembered how she'd looked in the moonlight, how she'd whispered his name, how perfectly they fit together. The Ice King's reputation was definitely in danger. After the meeting, they managed to maintain professional distance for almost 2 hours before Byron caught Florrie alone in the file room. What started as a discussion about offshore accounts ended with her pressed against the shelves, his hands in her hair, her legs wrapped around his waist. "We can't keep doing this," she gasped as he kissed her neck. "We absolutely can," he countered, finding that sensitive spot behind her ear that made her moan. "Byron, the Henderson investigation can wait." He captured her lips again, drowning in the taste of her. They were interrupted by voices in the corridor, forcing them to separate quickly. Florrie straightened her clothing while Byron tried to fix his hair. "Tonight," he promised as they slipped out separately, "my place." The rest of the day passed in a blur of stolen glances and hidden touches. The entire office was buzzing with whispers about the change in their fearsome CEO. The Ice King was smiling, laughing even. The world was surely ending. By evening, Byron had given up any pretense of work. He stood at his windows, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of purple and gold. The door opened behind him, and he knew without turning that it was Florrie. "Your assistant is terrified," she said, amusement in her voice. "Apparently you've been acting strange all day." Byron turned to face her, drinking in the sight of her. She'd let her hair down, the curls he loved framing her face. "Strange how?" "Well, you said please in a meeting, and you didn't make anyone cry during the budget review." She moved closer, her hips swaying hypnotically. "They think you've been replaced by a pod person." He caught her hands, pulling her against him. "Maybe I have been. Maybe the real Byron Levi was just waiting for the right person to wake him up." Florrie's eyes softened. "And have I woken you up?" Instead of answering, Byron kissed her with all the passion he'd been holding back all day. She melted against him, her body molding to his as if they'd been designed for each other. Her hands made quick work of his tie and jacket, while his fingers found the zipper of her dress. "Wait!" she gasped, as he kissed down her neck. "The windows!" Byron reached behind him, pressing a button that instantly frosted the glass. "Better?" She smiled against his lips. "Much." Her dress fell away, revealing midnight blue lingerie that made his breath catch. "You planned this." "Maybe." She started unbuttoning his shirt. "Or maybe I just like knowing I'm wearing something special beneath my business suit." The thought of her in meetings all day, wearing this beneath her professional exterior, drove him wild. Byron lifted her onto his desk, files and papers scattering unheeded to the floor. The Ice King would never have allowed such chaos, but Byron wasn't that man anymore. Florrie's skin glowed in the sunset light as he worshipped every inch of her. Her heartbeat raced beneath his lips as he kissed down her throat across her collarbone, lower still. She arched beneath him, gasping his name in a way that made him burn. Later, much later, they lay tangled together on the leather couch in his office, her head on his chest, his fingers tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. The city lights twinkled below, but neither paid them any attention. "We should probably review those Henderson files," Florrie murmured, making no move to get up. Byron kissed her temple. Probably. She propped herself up on an elbow, studying his face. You know, for someone called the Ice King, you run remarkably hot. He caught her hand, pressing it to his heart. Only for you. The tenderness in his voice surprised them both. This was more than passion, more than attraction. This was something deeper, something that terrified and thrilled him in equal measure. Byron. She traced his lips with her finger. What are we doing? Living, he replied simply. For the first time in years, I'm actually living. She smiled, but he could see worry in her eyes. The board won't like this. Office romance, especially between a CEO and an employee. I don't care. He sat up, pulling her with him. Let them talk. Let them worry. You're more important than their opinions. You've worked so hard to build this empire, and it means nothing without you in it. He cupped her face in his hands. I love you, Florrie Winter. I think I started falling for you the moment you walked into my office and challenged everything I thought I knew about myself. Tears sparkled in her eyes. I love you too, you impossible man. God help me, but I do. The kiss that followed was tender, full of promise and possibility. They both knew there would be challenges ahead. The board, the media, the Henderson investigation. But in that moment, nothing else mattered. The Ice King was well and truly gone, replaced by a man who had discovered that real power lay not in control, but in the courage to be vulnerable, in the strength to let love in. As the night deepened around them, Byron held Florrie close, listening to her heartbeat sync with his own. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, but for now he was content to simply exist in this moment, with the woman who had melted his walls and awakened his heart. The office walls had witnessed the transformation of Byron Levi from Ice King to simply a man in love. And somewhere in the building, Marcus was probably updating the office betting pool about when the wedding would be. Byron smiled at the thought. For once in his life, he didn't need to control everything. He was exactly where he was meant to be, with exactly who he was meant to be with. The rest would sort itself out in time. Chapter 5. The first move. The Henderson investigation had reached a critical point, but Byron couldn't focus on the numbers before him. His mind kept drifting to Florrie, to their shared nights, to the way she'd transformed his world. 3 weeks had passed since their first kiss, and each day brought new revelations. The morning sun streamed through his office windows as he read her latest message, meeting with Tokyo branch. Missing you already. A smile tugged at his lips, something that happened frequently these days, to his staff's ongoing bewilderment. The Ice King's transformation was the talk of the office, though no one dared mention it to his face. Marcus entered with the morning reports, trying not to react to his boss's obvious distraction. Sir, the board is requesting an update on the Henderson situation. Byron straightened in his chair, forcing himself to focus. Schedule it for tomorrow. And Marcus? Yes, sir? Have flowers delivered to the Tokyo conference room. White orchids. Marcus's pen paused over his notepad. Any message, sir? Byron thought for a moment. Simply sign it B. After Marcus left, Byron returned to the Henderson files, but his mind wandered to the previous night. Florrie had stayed over at his penthouse again, and he'd woken to find her wearing his shirt, making coffee in his kitchen. The domesticity of the moment had stirred something deep within him, a longing for permanence. His phone buzzed with a photo, white orchids on the conference table with Florrie's message beneath. You're impossible and wonderful. Come over tonight, he typed back. Can't. Dinner with my grandmother. She's in town. Byron's heart skipped. Her grandmother. The woman who'd raised her after her parents' death. the woman whose opinion meant everything to Florey. "Bring her to dinner," he found himself typing. "Let me meet her." The three dots appeared and disappeared several times before her response came. "Are you sure? This is a big step." "I'm sure about you, about us. Let me do this." Another pause. Then, "She'll ask about your intentions." Byron smiled. "Good. I have some intentions I'd like to discuss." In the Tokyo conference room, Florey stared at her phone, her heart racing. Byron Levi, the man who'd once struck fear into corporate boardrooms across continents, wanted to meet her grandmother, wanted to discuss intentions. The meeting dragged on, but Florey barely heard the presentations. Her mind was on Byron, on how he'd changed her life as much as she'd changed his, on how natural it felt to wake up in his arms, to share quiet moments between their hectic schedules. When the meeting finally ended, she slipped away to call her grandmother. "Nana, change your plans for tonight. Someone special wants to meet you." Hours later, Byron stood in his private dining room, adjusting his tie for the 10th time. He'd chosen this space over a restaurant, wanting privacy for this important moment. The chef he'd hired had prepared traditional South African dishes alongside modern cuisine, hoping to honor both worlds. The elevator chimed and Byron's heart stopped. Florey stepped out first, stunning in a deep green dress that made her skin glow. Behind her came an elegant woman with silver-streaked hair and eyes that held both wisdom and sharp intelligence. "Nana," Florey said, taking Byron's hand, "this is Byron Levi." "Ma'am." Byron stepped forward, extending his hand. "Thank you for coming." Grace Winter studied him with penetrating eyes. "So you're the man who's been keeping my granddaughter up late with merger investigations." "Nana!" Florey blushed, but Byron saw the hint of amusement in the older woman's eyes. "Among other things, yes." Grace's eyebrow rose at his honesty. "Well, at least you're direct. Shall we sit?" Over dinner, Byron found himself genuinely enchanted by Grace. She shared stories of Florey's childhood in South Africa, of her determination to succeed in a world that often underestimated her. In return, Byron opened up about his own past, his parents' death, raising his sister, building his company from nothing. "You've done well for yourself," Grace observed, sipping her wine. "But success isn't everything." "I'm learning that," Byron replied, his eyes meeting Florey's across the table. "Your granddaughter is teaching me what really matters." Grace set down her glass. "And what are your intentions toward my granddaughter, Mr. Levy?" Despite having anticipated this question, Byron's heart raced. He reached for Florey's hand, drawing strength from her touch. "I love her," he said simply. "She walked into my office and melted walls I'd spent years building. She makes me want to be better, to be more than just the Ice King everyone fears." Florey's eyes glistened with tears, but Grace wasn't finished. "Love is beautiful," she said carefully, "but it doesn't pay bills or build futures. What can you offer her besides wealth and status?" "Nana," Florey protested, but Byron squeezed her hand. "I can offer her partnership," he said firmly, "equality, support for her dreams and ambitions. I don't want to own her or control her. I want to build a life with her." Grace's expression softened. "And the board? The media? An interracial relationship between a CEO and an employee will create talk." "Let them talk." Byron's voice held steel. "I built my empire from nothing. I can do it again if necessary. But I won't lose Florey to satisfy other people's prejudices." A smile finally graced the older woman's features. "Good answer." After dessert, Grace excused herself to powder her nose, leaving Byron and Florey alone for a moment. "You're amazing," Florey whispered, kissing him softly. "She loves you already." Byron pulled her closer, breathing in her familiar scent. "I meant every word I said." "I know." She touched his face tenderly. "That's why I love you." When Grace returned, she carried herself with new purpose. Well, children, I believe my work here is done. So soon? Florrie asked. I've seen what I needed to see. Grace hugged her granddaughter, then turned to Byron. Take care of her heart, Mr. Levi. It's more precious than all your companies combined. I will, he promised solemnly, with everything I am. After they'd said their goodbyes and the elevator doors closed behind Grace, Byron pulled Florrie into his arms. Stay tonight? She pretended to consider it. I don't know. My grandmother might not approve. Byron laughed, a sound that was becoming more frequent these days. Somehow, I think she does approve. Florrie began loosening his tie. Then I suppose I could stay. They barely made it to the bedroom, leaving a trail of clothing in their wake. Byron took his time undressing her, savoring each inch of revealed skin like a man discovering treasure. The green dress pooled at her feet, leaving her in black lace that made his mouth go dry. You're so beautiful, he breathed, tracing the curve of her hip. Florrie's hands weren't idle, pushing his shirt off his shoulders, running her nails lightly down his chest. Her heartbeat was visible at her throat, quick and eager. The sound of her pulse quickening drove him wild. Byron, she gasped as his lips found that sensitive spot behind her ear. He lifted her onto the bed, following her down onto the silk sheets. Her skin glowed in the city lights that streamed through the windows, making her look like a goddess come to earth. Later, much later, they lay tangled in the sheets, Florrie's head on his chest, his fingers playing with her curls. The city hummed below them, but in their private sanctuary time seemed to stand still. What are you thinking? She asked, pressing a kiss to his shoulder. Byron tightened his arms around her. That I want every night to be like this. That I want to build a life with you, share everything with you. She propped herself up on an elbow, studying his face. Even the hard parts. Especially those. He tucked a curl behind her ear. I love you, Florrie Winter. The board, the media, none of it matters. You're what matters. Tears sparkled in her eyes as she kissed him softly. I love you too, Byron Levi, my impossible, wonderful man. As they drifted off to sleep, Byron held Florrie close, marveling at how completely she'd changed his world. The Ice King was truly gone, replaced by a man who had discovered that real strength lay in vulnerability, in opening his heart to love. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, the Henderson investigation, the board's reactions, the media's inevitable discovery of their relationship. But none of it mattered as much as the woman in his arms. As sleep claimed him, Byron smiled. For the first time in his life, he was exactly where he wanted to be, with exactly who he wanted to be with. The rest was just details. And somewhere across the city, Grace Winter was smiling too, knowing her granddaughter had found not just success, but true happiness. The Ice King had melted, revealing a man worthy of Florrie's heart. The world would adjust to this new reality. And if it didn't? Well, Byron Levi had built an empire once. For Florrie, he'd do it again in a heartbeat. Chapter 6. Beyond the Office. The morning after meeting Grace, Byron woke to find Florrie already dressed, standing at his bedroom windows. She wore one of his shirts over her dress from the night before, the rising sun casting a golden halo around her curls. The sight made his heart ache with love. You're thinking too loudly, he said, his voice rough with sleep. She turned, and the smile she gave him could have powered the entire city. Good morning, Ice King. That name doesn't fit anymore. He held out his hand. Come back to bed. Can't. But she came to sit beside him, letting him pull her close. Early meeting with the Henderson team. Byron traced patterns on her bare thigh, where his shirt had ridden up. Cancel it. You're a terrible influence. She kissed him softly, then stood. Some of us still have to work for a living. He caught her hand. Move in with me. The words hung in the air between them, surprising them both with their suddenness. but Byron realized he meant it with every fiber of his being. Byron. Florrie's eyes widened. I mean it. He sat up, suddenly urgent. I love waking up with you. I love seeing your things mixed with mine. I love the way you've made this place feel like a home instead of just somewhere I sleep. She sat back down, her expression serious. This is a big step. Everything about us has been a big step. He tucked a curl behind her ear. And every step has been worth it. The media will have a field day. The board ... I don't care. He cupped her face in his hands. I love you. Move in with me. Florrie studied his face, her eyes searching his. You're sure? I've never been more sure of anything. Her smile bloomed slowly, like a sunrise. Yes. The kiss that followed made them both very late for their morning meetings. Later that day, Byron sat in his office, trying to focus on quarterly reports, but thinking instead about Florrie's yes. His phone buzzed with a message from her. Dinner tonight? I know a place. Name it, he replied. Wear something casual and don't bring the Aston Martin. Byron smiled, intrigued. Florrie had a way of constantly surprising him, of showing him parts of life he'd forgotten existed beyond his corporate bubble. That evening, dressed in jeans and a cashmere sweater that made Florrie's eyes darken appreciatively, Byron followed her directions to a small Ethiopian restaurant tucked away in a quiet neighborhood. Mamitu's, Florrie explained as they entered, best Ethiopian food in the city. The owner, a woman with kind eyes and a warm smile, greeted Florrie like family. Ah, Tesoro, and this must be your Byron. Byron found himself enveloped in a hug that would have once made the Ice King recoil. Now he returned it warmly. They were led to a corner table, intimate and away from prying eyes. Florrie ordered for them in perfect Amharic, another surprise that made Byron fall even deeper in love. How many languages do you speak? He asked as they waited for their food. 5 fluently, 3 conversationally. She shrugged. Growing up in South Africa, languages were a bridge between cultures. You're extraordinary. He reached across the table to take her hand. Every day I learn something new about you that amazes me. A blush colored her cheeks. Says the man who built an empire from nothing. An empire that meant nothing until you walked into it. Their food arrived, fragrant stews and tender meats served on injera bread. Florrie taught him how to eat with his hands, laughing at his initial awkwardness. By the end of the meal, Byron had fallen in love not just with the food, but with this whole new world she was showing him. There's so much life beyond those office windows, Florrie said as they walked hand in hand through the neighborhood after dinner. So much beauty in the ordinary moments. Byron pulled her close, kissing her temple. You're teaching me to see it all. They ended up in a tiny jazz club where the music wrapped around them like silk. Florrie fit perfectly in his arms as they swayed together, her head on his chest, his heart beating in time with the bass. Move in with me tomorrow, he murmured into her hair. She looked up at him, amused. Someone's eager. Life's too short to wait for perfect moments. He spun her slowly. Every moment with you is perfect anyway. Later that night they lay tangled in his sheets, the city lights painting patterns across their skin. Florrie wore only his dress shirt, unbuttoned just enough to drive him wild. Her heartbeat was visible at her throat, a rhythm he'd memorized like his favorite song. What are you thinking? She asked, tracing his jawline. That I want to show you my world, the way you're showing me yours. He kissed her fingertips. Let me take you to Paris, Rome, Tokyo, anywhere you want to go. Byron Levi, are you trying to sweep me off my feet? Your feet seem firmly planted to me. He rolled them over, hovering above her. It's my world that's been turned upside down. She reached up to touch his face tenderly. Good answer. The kiss that followed was slow and deep, full of promises for the future. Byron took his time undressing her, worshipping every inch of golden skin revealed. Her sighs and whispers were a symphony he never tired of conducting. "Byron," she gasped, as his lips found that sensitive spot behind her ear. He could feel her pulse racing beneath his touch, her body arching into his with perfect synchronicity. The Ice King would have maintained control, would have held back. But Byron was done with walls and barriers. Later, much later, they lay catching their breath, Florrie's curls spread across his chest like a dark river. The city hummed below them, but in their private sanctuary, time seemed to stand still. "I love you," Florrie whispered into the darkness. Byron pulled her closer, his heart full to bursting. "I love you more than I knew was possible." Morning found them tangled together, the sunrise painting Florrie's skin in shades of gold. Byron watched her sleep, memorizing every detail, the flutter of her eyelashes, the slight curve of her lips, the way her hand rested over his heart. His phone buzzed with early morning business calls, but for once, Byron Levi, CEO of a global empire, let them go to voicemail. Some moments were too precious to interrupt. Florrie stirred, her eyes opening slowly. "You're staring." "Admiring," he corrected, kissing her softly. She stretched like a cat, the movement making his shirt ride up her thighs. "What time is it?" "Time for breakfast." He traced patterns on her bare shoulder. "Or we could stay in bed all day." Tempting. She propped herself up on an elbow. "But some of us have empires to save, remember? The Henderson investigation, reality intruding on their perfect morning." But even that couldn't dim the joy Byron felt knowing this woman would be coming home to him every night. "Shower with me?" he suggested, his hands already wandering. Florrie's laugh turned into a gasp as his fingers found sensitive skin. "You're insatiable." "Only for you." They barely made it to the office by 9, but Byron couldn't bring himself to care. The Ice King would have been appalled at such unprofessional behavior. But the Ice King had never known the warmth of Florrie's smile, the taste of her kisses, the way she made the world brighter just by existing in it. As they parted in the elevator, maintaining professional distance despite the memories of their shower still fresh, Florrie squeezed his hand quickly. "Tonight we pack my apartment," she said with a smile. Byron's heart soared. "I'll send movers." "No." She shook her head. "We do this together, the real way." As the elevator doors closed between them, Byron touched his lips, still feeling the ghost of her kiss. She was right, of course. Some things were worth doing the real way, worth experiencing fully instead of delegating. The day stretched ahead, full of meetings and decisions, but Byron's mind kept returning to Florrie, to the life they were building together, to the way she was teaching him to see beauty in the ordinary moments. The Ice King was truly gone, replaced by a man who had discovered that real power lay not in control or distance, but in the courage to love fully and without reservation. And somewhere in the building, Florrie was smiling too, her hand touching the key to their home that Byron had given her that morning. They were building something rare and precious, a love that bridged worlds, that melted ice and kindled fire. Tonight, they would pack her apartment together. Tomorrow, they would face whatever challenges came their way, but they would face them together. And that made all the difference. The world would have to adjust to this new reality. The Ice King had found his queen, and nothing would ever be the same. Chapter 7. Storm Clouds. The Henderson investigation had reached a critical point just as Florrie finished moving into Byron's penthouse. Their personal happiness was at its peak, but dark clouds were gathering on the horizon. Byron stood at his office windows, reading an anonymous email that had just arrived. "Back off the Henderson investigation, or everyone learns about your affair with the employee who's feeding you false information." His hands clenched into fists. They were threatening Florrie. The Ice King would have calculated the business implications, weighed the pros and cons. But Byron felt only rage at the threat to the woman he loved. His phone buzzed. Florrie. My office. Now someone's been in my files. Byron was moving before he finished reading the message. He found Florrie in her office, her normally perfect composure shaken. Papers were scattered across her desk, her computer showing signs of attempted access. Someone's trying to discredit the investigation, she said as he closed the door. They're painting me as a corporate spy. Byron pulled her into his arms, feeling her tremble slightly. Let them try. We have proof. It's not that simple. She pulled back to look at him. They're threatening to expose us to the board. Your reputation. I don't care about my reputation. He cupped her face in his hands. I care about you. She leaned into his touch. Byron, they're powerful people. The Henderson family has connections everywhere. So do I. He kissed her forehead. And unlike them, I have nothing to hide. A knock interrupted them. Marcus entered with a thick envelope. Sir, this just arrived by courier. Inside were photos. Byron and Florrie at dinner, holding hands in the jazz club, kissing on his balcony. Along with them, doctored financial records suggesting Florrie had been planted to destroy both companies. They've been watching us, Florrie whispered, her hands shaking as she looked at the photos. Byron's fury rose, but he kept his voice steady. Move security to your office. No one comes in without clearance. I can take care of myself, she protested. I know you can. He pulled her close again. But I can't lose you. Please, let me protect you. She studied his face, seeing the fear beneath his control. Okay, but we face this together. That night, they returned to their penthouse, both on edge. Byron had tripled security, but the threats had shaken them. As soon as the elevator doors closed, he pulled Florrie into his arms, needing to feel her safe against him. I'm okay, she murmured, but her fingers clutched his shirt. He buried his face in her hair, breathing in her familiar scent. I should have seen this coming. The Hendersons wouldn't go down without a fight. Florrie pulled back to look at him. We knew the risks when we started the investigation. The professional risks, his voice roughened. Not this, not threats against you. She reached up to touch his face. Byron, look at me, I'm not afraid of them. You should be. He caught her hand, pressing it to his heart. They're desperate people with dangerous connections. And we have the truth. She smiled softly. Plus, I have the former Ice King on my side. Despite his worry, Byron felt a smile tug at his lips. Former? She started unbuttoning his shirt. You're definitely not ice anymore. Her touch ignited him as it always did. Byron caught her hands, pressing kisses to her palms. Florrie. Make me forget about them, she whispered. Make me think only of you. He lifted her into his arms, carrying her to their bedroom. The city lights painted patterns across her skin as he undressed her slowly, reverently. Her heart raced beneath his lips as he kissed down her throat, across her collarbone. Byron, she gasped as his hands explored familiar territory. He could hear her pulse quickening, feel the tremors running through her body. Every sigh, every whisper of his name drove him wild. The Ice King would have maintained control, would have held back. But Byron was done with control. Later, tangled in silk sheets, Florrie traced patterns on his chest. We should look at those financial records again. Byron caught her hand, kissing her fingers. Tomorrow, tonight you're safe in my arms. That's all that matters. She propped herself up on an elbow, her curls falling around her face like a dark curtain. When did the mighty Byron Levi become such a romantic? When a beautiful woman walked into my office and melted all my defenses. He tucked a curl behind her ear. I love you, Florrie Winter. Nothing they do can change that. Her eyes softened. I love you too, more than I ever thought possible. The kiss that followed was tender, full of promise and protection. Byron held her close as she drifted off to sleep, his mind working through scenarios. He'd built his empire from nothing, had faced down countless threats, but none of them had ever threatened something so precious. Morning came too soon, bringing with it new challenges. Another envelope arrived, this time with more details about their relationship and supposed evidence of corporate espionage. "The board is calling an emergency meeting," Marcus reported. "They want to discuss the Henderson investigation and your relationship with Ms. Winter." Byron straightened his tie, steel entering his voice. "Good. It's time they learned who really runs this company." Florrie met him outside the boardroom, looking elegant and unshakable in a deep purple suit. "Ready?" He took her hand. Propriety be damned. "Together?" "Always." The boardroom fell silent as they entered hand in hand. The oldest board member, Harrison Wells, spoke first. "Mr. Levi, Ms. Winter, we have some concerns." "About the Henderson investigation or about my personal life?" Byron's voice carried the chill of his former reputation. "Both." Harrison slid the photos across the table. "This relationship compromises everything." Florrie stepped forward, her voice steady. "The only thing compromised here is the Henderson family's illegal activities, activities we can prove." She spread documents across the table, the real financial records showing years of fraud and embezzlement. The board members leaned forward, their expressions changing as they absorbed the evidence. "The Hendersons are trying to discredit me because they can't dispute the facts," Florrie continued. "They're attacking my relationship with Byron because they can't attack my findings." Byron moved to stand beside her, his shoulder touching hers. "My personal life is not up for discussion. The future of this company, however, is. The Hendersons' actions threaten everything we've built." The board murmured among themselves. Finally, Harrison spoke again. "The evidence is compelling, but your relationship is private," Byron cut in. "I love her. That's all you need to know." Florrie's hand found his under the table, squeezing gently. "The media will have a field day," another board member warned. "Let them." Byron's voice held no room for argument. "I built this company from nothing. I can weather a few headlines." After hours of discussion, the board finally agreed to proceed with the Henderson investigation. As they left the boardroom, Byron pulled Florrie into his private office. "You were magnificent," he said, pushing her against the door. She smiled up at him. "So were you. Very Ice King-ish. Only when protecting what matters." He traced her jawline with his thumb. "And you matter more than anything." The kiss that followed was passionate, full of relief and promise. Florrie's hands slid under his jacket as his lips found that sensitive spot behind her ear. "Byron," she gasped, "the board can wait." He lifted her onto his desk, files scattering unheeded to the floor. Her laughter turned to sighs as he unbuttoned her silk blouse, revealing lace that matched her suit. His control shattered at the sight of her, at the sound of her quickening pulse. Later, much later, they lay tangled together on the leather couch in his office. Florrie wore his shirt, her curls gloriously disheveled. Byron traced patterns on her bare shoulder, marveling at how perfectly she fit against him. "We should probably review those Henderson files," she murmured, making no move to get up. Byron kissed her temple. "Probably, but first." His phone buzzed, another anonymous threat. But this time, neither of them felt afraid. They had faced down the board together. They could face anything. "Let them try," Florrie said, reading the message over his shoulder. "We're stronger together." Byron pulled her closer, his heart full of love and determination. The Ice King might be gone, but in his place was a man who would move heaven and earth to protect what mattered. And nothing mattered more than the woman in his arms. Chapter 8. The truth emerges. The morning headlines screamed across every financial news outlet. Henderson family fraud exposed. Byron stood at his office windows, watching the sunrise paint the city gold, while his phone buzzed constantly with messages from reporters, board members, and industry leaders. But his attention was focused entirely on Florrie, who sat at his desk, reviewing the final evidence they would present to the authorities. She wore a deep blue dress that made her skin glow, her curls pulled back in an elegant twist that made him want to undo it slowly, piece by piece. "The SEC will be here in an hour," she said, looking up to catch him staring. "You should probably stop undressing me with your eyes and focus on the presentation." He smiled, moving to stand behind her chair. "I can multitask." Florrie leaned back against him, letting out a small sigh as his hands massaged her shoulders. "You're impossible." "You love it." He bent to kiss her neck, inhaling the jasmine scent that drove him wild. "Byron." But her protest turned into a soft moan as his lips found that sensitive spot behind her ear. A knock at the door made them spring apart. Marcus entered with a stack of newspapers and a knowing smile. "Sir, Miss Winter, the SEC team has arrived early." Byron straightened his tie while Florrie gathered the files. "Show them to the main conference room." The next few hours were a whirlwind of presentations, questions, and detailed financial analysis. Florrie commanded the room, her intelligence and preparation leaving no doubt about the validity of their findings. Byron watched her with pride and growing desire as she systematically destroyed the Henderson family's criminal empire. "The pension funds will be protected," one SEC investigator asked. "Completely," Florrie assured them. "We've already secured the assets and created a plan for full restitution." After the SEC team left, promising swift action, Byron pulled Florrie into his private office. "You were magnificent." She smiled up at him, her eyes bright with triumph. "We did it. We actually did it." "You did it." He cupped her face in his hands. "You saved thousands of people's retirements. You brought down one of the most powerful families in the country." "We did it together." She rose on tiptoes to kiss him softly. "The Ice King and his queen." Byron growled at her teasing tone, backing her against his desk. "I'll show you who's ice." His phone buzzed, a message from James Henderson himself. "You'll regret this, Levi. Both of you." Florrie read it over his shoulder, her body tensing. "They won't go down quietly." "Let them make noise." Byron deleted the message. "We have truth on our side, and each other." She studied his face. "You're really not worried?" "About the Hendersons?" "No." He pulled her closer. "About losing you? Terrified?" "Byron." Her eyes softened. "You're not going to lose me." He buried his face in her hair, breathing her in. "Promise." "Promise." She pulled back to look at him, her hands framing his face. "I love you, you impossible man. Nothing the Hendersons or anyone else does can change that." The kiss that followed was deep and hungry, full of relief and celebration and need. Byron lifted her onto his desk, files scattering unheeded to the floor. Florrie's hands made quick work of his tie and jacket, while his fingers found the zipper of her dress. "Here?" she gasped, as his lips traced down her throat. "Here." He pushed the dress off her shoulders, revealing midnight blue lace that made his mouth go dry. "Now." Her laugh turned into a moan as his hands and lips explored familiar territory. He could hear her heart racing, feel the tremors running through her body as she arched against him. The Ice King would have maintained control, would have waited until they were home. But Byron was done with waiting. Later, much later, they lay tangled together on the leather couch in his office. Florrie wore his shirt, her curls gloriously disheveled. Byron traced patterns on her bare shoulder, marveling at how perfectly she fit against him. "We should probably get back to work," she murmured, making no move to get up. "Probably." He kissed her temple. Or we could celebrate properly. She propped herself up on an elbow, studying his face. What did you have in mind? Paris. He tucked a curl behind her ear. Rome. Anywhere you want to go. Let me show you the world properly, not just through business meetings. Florrie's eyes lit up. Really? You'd take time off. For you, he kissed her softly. I'd move mountains. They were interrupted by another knock. Marcus again. Sir, the board is requesting an emergency meeting. Byron sighed against Florrie's lips. Tell them 1 hour. After Marcus left, Florrie started gathering her clothes. They'll want to discuss damage control. Let them discuss it. Byron watched her dress, already missing the feel of her skin. We did the right thing. She finished buttoning her dress, then came to straighten his tie. The right thing isn't always the easy thing. Nothing worth having ever is. He caught her hands, pressing them to his heart. But you make everything worth it. The board meeting was tense but ultimately supportive. The evidence against the Hendersons was irrefutable, and the public relations boost from exposing the fraud would more than offset any temporary market turbulence. Ms. Winter, Harrison Wells said as the meeting concluded, the board owes you an apology. Your relationship with Mr. Levi had no bearing on your excellent work. Florrie smiled graciously. Thank you, Mr. Wells, though I think you'll find that relationship has made both of us better at our jobs. Byron squeezed her hand under the table, pride and love swelling in his chest. That night, they celebrated properly at home. Byron had arranged for their favorite chef from Sophia's to cater a private dinner on their balcony. Candles flickered in the evening breeze as they toasted their victory. To bringing down the bad guys, Florrie said, raising her champagne glass. To us, Byron countered, clinking his glass against hers. She set down her glass, moving to sit in his lap, to love melting ice. His hands settled on her hips as she straddled him, to fire warming cold hearts. The kiss tasted of champagne and triumph. Byron stood, lifting her with him. Florrie wrapped her legs around his waist as he carried her to their bedroom, leaving dinner forgotten on the balcony. The city lights painted patterns across her skin as he undressed her slowly, reverently. Her heart raced beneath his lips as he kissed down her throat across her collarbone, lower still. Every sigh, every whisper of his name drove him wild. I love you, he breathed against her skin. Show me, she gasped, pulling him closer. Hours later, they lay tangled in silk sheets, satisfied and peaceful. Florrie traced the lines of his face with gentle fingers. What are you thinking? She asked. Byron caught her hand, kissing her palm. That I'm the luckiest man alive. She smiled softly. Because we brought down a criminal empire. Because I found you. He pulled her closer. Everything else is just details. As they drifted off to sleep, Byron held Florrie close, marveling at how completely she'd changed his world. The Henderson investigation had tested them, had tried to break them. Instead, it had only made them stronger. The Ice King was truly gone, replaced by a man who had discovered that real strength lay not in power or control, but in the courage to love completely and without reservation. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new battles to fight. But tonight, Byron had everything he needed in his arms. The world could wait. And somewhere in a prison cell, James Henderson was learning that some forces couldn't be threatened or bought. Love, truth, justice, these were powers greater than all his wealth and connections combined. The truth had emerged, and with it, a love story for the ages. The Ice King had found his queen, and together they were unstoppable. Chapter 9. Meeting the Family. The morning sun streamed through the penthouse windows as Byron adjusted his tie for the 10th time. Today was important. His sister Luna was coming to meet Florrie properly. After their parents' death, Luna had been his only family. and her opinion meant everything to him. "Stop fidgeting," Florrie said, coming up behind him. She wore a flowing sundress that made her look like summer personified. "She'll love me." Byron turned, pulling her close. "Everyone loves you. That's not what I'm worried about." "Then what?" "Luna knows me better than anyone. She'll tell you all my secrets." Florrie's laugh was musical. "Good. I want to know everything about the man behind the Ice King facade." The elevator chimed, and Byron's heart rate quickened. Luna Levi swept into the penthouse like a force of nature, her dark hair flying and her smile bright. "Finally!" She hugged Byron fiercely, then turned to Florrie, "The woman who melted my brother's frozen heart." Before Florrie could respond, Luna had enveloped her in a warm embrace. "Thank you for making him human again." "Luna," Byron warned, but his sister ignored him. "You should have seen him before," Luna continued, linking arms with Florrie and leading her to the living room. "All work and no play, scowling at everyone, building walls higher than his skyscrapers." Florrie shot Byron an amused look over her shoulder. "Do tell." The next few hours were filled with stories. Luna sharing tales of their childhood, of Byron's early days building his empire, of the way he'd shut down emotionally after their parents' death. In return, Florrie told stories of her own family, of growing up in South Africa, of her grandmother's wisdom. "He smiles now," Luna observed, watching her brother watch Florrie. "Real smiles, not those corporate grimaces he used to manage. He has a beautiful smile," Florrie agreed, reaching for Byron's hand. "And you," Luna turned to Florrie, her expression serious. "You're not intimidated by his power or his reputation. You see him." "I see him," Florrie confirmed softly, "and I love everything I see." Byron pulled her closer, kissing her temple. Luna watched them with tears in her eyes. "Mom and Dad would have loved you," she told Florrie. "They always wanted Byron to find someone who could match him, challenge him, love him for himself and not his empire." The mention of their parents made Byron's throat tight. Florrie squeezed his hand, offering silent support. "Tell me about them," she requested gently. Luna spent the next hour sharing memories. Their father's determination, their mother's kindness, the love that had filled their home before the accident. Byron remained quiet, but his grip on Florrie's hand never loosened. "Enough sad memories," Luna declared finally. "Let's celebrate. Byron, get that ridiculous expensive champagne you love." As Byron went to the wine cellar, he heard Luna's voice drop. "Thank you for loving him, for bringing him back to life." "He brought me to life too," Florrie replied softly. "He sees me for who I am, not what I look like or where I came from." "That's my brother," Luna said proudly. "Once he lets someone in, his love is absolute." Byron returned with the champagne to find the two most important women in his life laughing together like old friends. His heart felt full to bursting. Later, after Luna left with promises to return soon, Byron found Florrie on their balcony, watching the sunset. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, breathing in her familiar jasmine scent. "Thank you," he murmured against her hair. "For what?" "For being you, for loving me, for making my sister happier than I've seen her in years." Florrie turned in his arms, reaching up to touch his face. "I love seeing this side of you. The brother, the son, the man behind the CEO." Byron caught her hand, pressing it to his heart. "You see all of me, and I want all of you." She rose on tiptoes to kiss him softly. Every version, every story, every scar. The kiss deepened quickly, passion igniting between them as it always did. Byron lifted her into his arms, carrying her to their bedroom. The sunset painted her skin in shades of gold as he undressed her slowly, reverently. Byron, she gasped as his lips traced down her throat. He could hear her heart racing, feel the tremors running through her body as she arched against him. The Ice King would have maintained control, would have held back. But Byron was done with control. Later, tangled in silk sheets, Florrie traced patterns on his chest. "Luna showed me photos of your parents." Byron tensed slightly but forced himself to relax. "And you have your father's determination and your mother's heart." She propped herself up to look at him. "They'd be proud of who you've become." Tears stung his eyes. "Because of you. You taught me how to feel again." Florrie kissed him tenderly. "You always knew how. You just needed someone to remind you it was safe." They made love again, slower this time, full of tenderness and healing. Byron poured all his love, all his gratitude into every touch, every kiss. Florrie responded with equal passion, her body moving with his in perfect harmony. Morning found them still wrapped around each other, the sunrise painting patterns across their skin. Byron watched Florrie sleep, his heart full of love and possibility. Luna had been right. Their parents would have loved her. They would have seen what he saw, a woman of incredible strength and beauty whose fire had melted his ice and awakened his heart. As Florrie stirred, her eyes opening slowly, Byron knew with absolute certainty that she was his future. The Ice King's empire meant nothing compared to the kingdom they were building together, a kingdom of love, trust, and family. "What are you thinking?" she asked, her voice soft with sleep. Byron pulled her closer, kissing her forehead. "That I want to spend the rest of my life with you." Florrie's eyes widened as she processed his words. "Byron. Not a proposal. Not yet." He tucked a curl behind her ear. "But soon, when the time is right, when I can give you the moment you deserve." She smiled, that radiant smile that had first melted his defenses. "I don't need grand gestures or perfect moments. I just need you. You have me." He kissed her softly, always and completely. As they lay there, planning their future in whispers and kisses, Byron felt truly at peace. The Ice King was gone, replaced by a man who had rediscovered not just love, but family, connection, and joy. And it was all because of the extraordinary woman in his arms, who had walked into his office and changed everything. The world could wait. This moment was perfect, exactly as it was. Chapter 10. The Choice. The call came at 3 in the morning. Byron woke to find Florrie sitting up in bed, her phone pressed to her ear, her face pale in the moonlight. "I'll be there as soon as I can," she said, her voice trembling. "Just keep her comfortable." Byron sat up, pulling her into his arms. "What's wrong?" "My grandmother." Tears sparkled in her eyes. "She's in the hospital in Cape Town. They're not sure." "I'll have the jet ready in an hour," he said immediately. Florrie looked up at him, surprised. "Byron, you have the merger negotiations." "They can wait." He was already reaching for his phone. "Family can't." Within the hour, they were in his private jet, heading for South Africa. Florrie wore one of his sweaters over her travel clothes. Looking small and vulnerable in a way he'd never seen before, Byron held her close as she finally let herself cry. "She raised me after my parents died," she whispered into his chest. "She's everything to me. Then she's everything to me too." He kissed her temple. "Try to rest, love. We'll be there soon." But neither of them slept. As the sun rose over the Atlantic, Florrie told him stories about her grandmother. How she'd encouraged Florrie's education, supported her dreams, taught her to be proud of who she was. "She's the one who told me never to let anyone intimidate me," she said with a small smile. "Even Ice Kings." Byron chuckled softly. "I'm grateful for that advice." They landed in Cape Town, as the African sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant golds and purples. A car was waiting to take them directly to the hospital, where they found Grace Winter in a private room, looking frail but still regal. "Ah," she said as they entered, "my beautiful girl, and her Byron." Florrie rushed to her grandmother's side, while Byron hung back, giving them privacy. He watched as they spoke in rapid Xhosa, their love for each other evident in every word, every touch. Finally, Grace beckoned him closer. "Come here, young man. Let me look at you properly." Byron took her offered hand, surprised by the strength still in her grip. "Mom, you dropped everything to bring my granddaughter home." Her eyes were sharp despite her illness. "That tells me everything I need to know about you." "I love her," Byron said simply. "Her family is my family." Grace smiled. "Good answer. Now, help an old woman sit up. I want to tell you both something." Once she was settled, Grace took both their hands. "The doctors say it's my heart. They want to operate, but the risks—" "Nana, please," Florrie began, but Grace shushed her. "Let me finish. I've lived a good life, my darling. I've seen you grow into an extraordinary woman. I've seen you find a love that matches your strength." She squeezed Byron's hand. "Whatever happens, I am at peace." Tears rolled down Florrie's cheeks. "I need you, Nana. You have everything you need right here." Grace touched her granddaughter's heart. "And here," she gestured to Byron, "let them operate. I'm not done watching this love story unfold." The next 24 hours were a blur of doctors, consultations, and preparations. Byron used every connection he had to ensure Grace had the best surgical team available. He held Florrie through her tears, her fears, her hope. As they waited during the surgery, Florrie paced the private waiting room he'd arranged. "Tell me about your parents," she said suddenly. "About losing them." Byron's heart clenched, but he understood her need. It was sudden. A car accident. One moment they were there, the next. She came to sit beside him, taking his hand. "How did you cope?" "I didn't, really." He traced patterns on her palm. "I shut down, focused on taking care of Luna, building the company. It was easier than feeling. Until now," he pulled her closer, "until you walked into my office and made me feel everything." She buried her face in his neck, breathing him in. "I can't lose her, Byron." "You won't." He kissed her hair. "Your grandmother is as strong as you are. She'll fight." Hours passed. Byron ordered food that neither of them ate. He handled business calls and emails one-handed, his other hand never leaving Florrie's. Finally, the surgeon appeared. "The operation was successful. She's strong, your grandmother." Florrie collapsed against Byron, sobbing with relief. He held her close, his own eyes wet with tears of gratitude. They spent the next week in Cape Town, dividing their time between the hospital and Florrie's childhood home. Byron worked remotely, handling the merger negotiations via video conference, while Florrie helped her grandmother recover. One evening, he found them on the house's wraparound porch, speaking softly in Xhosa. The setting sun made Florrie's skin glow, and his heart swelled with love. "Join us, Byron," Grace called. "Come watch the sunset with your family." Family. The word made his throat tight as he sat beside Florrie, pulling her close. "I was just telling Nana about Luna," Florrie said, snuggling into his embrace. "Ah, yes, your sister." Grace's eyes twinkled. "She must visit next time. We'll have a proper family gathering." The simple acceptance in her words made Byron's heart full. "I'd like that very much." Later that night, in Florrie's childhood bedroom, Byron held her close as she cried, not tears of sadness now, but of relief and joy. "Thank you," she whispered against his chest, "for everything." He tilted her face up to his. "Thank you for sharing your family with me, for letting me be part of this." The kiss was tender at first, then grew heated as relief and love overwhelmed them both. Byron undressed her slowly, reverently, his lips following the path of each revealed inch of skin. "Byron," she gasped as he kissed down her throat. He could hear her heart racing, feel the tremors running through her body as she arched against him. The childhood bed creaked slightly, making them both laugh softly. "Shh," Florrie whispered, pulling him closer. "Nana's room is next door." The need to be quiet made everything more intense, more intimate. Every touch, every kiss had to be controlled, measured. But their passion couldn't be contained. Later, tangled in sheets that smelled of African sunshine, Florrie traced patterns on his chest. "I love you, Byron Levi." He caught her hand, pressing it to his heart. "I love you, Florrie Winter, more than I ever thought possible." She propped herself up on an elbow, studying his face in the moonlight. "When did you know that this was real?" "The moment you walked into my office," he admitted. "But I think I fell in love with you the first time you challenged me, showed me there was more to life than control and power." She smiled, that radiant smile that still made his heart skip. The Ice King melted. "Only for you." He pulled her down for another kiss. "Always for you." The next morning they found Grace already on the porch, drinking tea and watching the sunrise. She patted the seats beside her without looking. "Young love," she said with a knowing smile. "It's beautiful to witness." Florrie blushed, but Byron just smiled, pulling her close. "Not so young, ma'am. Just right." Grace's eyes twinkled. "Indeed. Now when can I expect grandchildren?" "Nana," Florrie protested while Byron laughed. "Soon," he promised, earning an elbow in the ribs from Florrie, "when the time is right." As the African sun rose higher, painting the world in gold, Byron held Florrie close and thanked whatever fate had brought them together. The Ice King was truly gone, replaced by a man who had discovered that real strength lay not in isolation, but in connection, in love, in family, in this moment, perfect and complete. The world could wait. Right now, he had everything he needed right here. Chapter 11. Two Worlds Unite. The African sunrise painted the sky in brilliant golds and purples as Byron stood on the balcony of their hotel suite in Cape Town. After Grace's recovery, he'd stayed longer, wanting to know everything about Florrie's world, to understand the places and people that had shaped her into the woman he loved. Warm arms wrapped around him from behind. "You're up early." He turned to pull Florrie closer, drinking in the sight of her. She wore his shirt, her curls wild from sleep, looking more beautiful than any sunrise. "I have a surprise for you," he said, kissing her softly. Her eyes lit up. "What kind of surprise?" "Get dressed. Something comfortable for walking." An hour later, they stood at the base of Table Mountain as the morning mist cleared. Florrie's eyes widened as she realized his plan. "We're hiking up?" Byron grinned. "Your grandmother said it was your favorite place, that you used to come here to think, to dream." Tears sparkled in her eyes. "You remembered." "I remember everything about you." He took her hand. "Show me your mountain." The climb was challenging, but Florrie knew every path, every shortcut. She told him stories as they ascended, of childhood adventures, of teenage dreams, of the day she decided to conquer the corporate world. "I used to stand at the top," she said as they neared the summit, "and imagine myself in skyscrapers like yours. Now here I am, with the man who owns those skyscrapers." Byron pulled her close, both of them breathless from the climb. "The man who owns those skyscrapers is yours." The kiss tasted of sunshine and possibility. When they finally reached the top, the view took Byron's breath away. Cape Town spread out below them, the ocean stretching endlessly beyond. "Now you see why I love it," Florrie said, watching his face. "It's magnificent." He wrapped his arms around her from behind. Like you. They spent hours at the summit, sharing the picnic he'd arranged, talking about everything and nothing. Byron felt peace settle over him, not the cold peace of his Ice King days, but a warm contentment he'd only known since Florrie entered his life. Near the summit, they found a secluded spot overlooking the city. Byron pulled Florrie into his lap, her back against his chest, both of them breathless from more than just the climb. "I used to sit here for hours," she said, playing with his fingers, "watching the clouds, imagining my future. And now," he pressed a kiss to her shoulder, "now I know my future is wherever you are." The words triggered something in Byron, a need, a certainty, a destiny. He gently moved her off his lap, coming to kneel before her. "Marry me," he said, his heart pounding harder than during any business deal. Florrie's eyes widened, filling with tears. "Byron, I know we haven't been together long in calendar days," he continued, taking her trembling hands in his. "But I've lived more, felt more, been more since meeting you than in all the years before. You walked into my office and melted walls I'd spent years building. You showed me that real power isn't in control or fear, but in love and trust." A tear rolled down her cheek as he spoke from his heart, his thumbs brushing patterns on her wrists. "You see me, not the Ice King, not the CEO, but the man beneath it all. You challenge me, support me, love me exactly as I am while making me want to be better. I don't have a ring right now, though I have one at home that was my mother's. But this moment, here on your mountain, in your world that you've shared with me so generously, it feels perfect." "It is perfect," she whispered. "I want to build a life with you, share everything with you, face whatever comes next together." He kissed her hands, tasting the salt of her tears on her skin. "Marry me, my love. Make me the happiest man in both our worlds." Florrie pulled him to his feet, framing his face with her hands. Their eyes met, ice and fire, power and passion, two souls that had found their missing pieces. "Yes," she breathed against his lips, 1,000 times yes. The kiss that followed was electric, charged with joy and promise and need. Byron lifted her off her feet, spinning them both as their laughter echoed across the mountaintop. When he set her down, her eyes were dark with desire. "Take me home," she whispered. They barely made it back to their hotel, hands wandering during the drive, kisses stolen at red lights. In the elevator, Byron pressed Florrie against the wall, his lips finding that spot behind her ear that made her gasp his name. The suite door had barely closed behind them before clothes started falling away. Byron took his time undressing his fiancée, worshipping every inch of revealed skin with lips and hands. Florrie's sighs turned to moans as he kissed down her throat, across her collarbone, lower still. Her heart raced beneath his touch, its rhythm matching his own passionate pulse. The afternoon sun painted patterns across her golden skin as she arched beneath him, his name a prayer on her lips. "I love you," she gasped, as pleasure overwhelmed her. "I love you more than life," he breathed against her skin. They made love slowly, tenderly, then again with passionate urgency. Each touch was a promise, each kiss a vow. The Ice King was truly gone, replaced by a man consumed by fire and love. Later, as the African sunset painted the sky in brilliant colors, they lay tangled in silk sheets. Florrie traced patterns on Byron's chest while he played with her curls, both of them floating in post-engagement bliss. "We should call our families," she murmured, pressing a kiss to his shoulder. Byron reached for his phone, dialing Luna first. His sister's scream of joy was probably heard across continents. "Finally!" Luna exclaimed. "I was wondering when you'd make it official. Did you give her Mum's ring?" "Not yet," Byron admitted. "It was a spontaneous proposal on Table Mountain." "Even better," Luna declared. "More romantic that way. Oh, Byron, I'm so happy for you both." Next, they called Grace. Florrie's grandmother was serene in her joy. "I knew from the moment I met him," she told Florrie and Josa, then switched to English for Byron's benefit. "Welcome to the family, my son." They spent the rest of the evening celebrating with Grace at her home, where she insisted on preparing a traditional engagement feast. The simple family dinner meant more to Byron than any corporate celebration ever had. After dinner, Grace pulled Byron aside while Florrie was in the kitchen. "You've brought light back to her eyes," Grace said softly. "The same light I saw in her mother's eyes when she met her father." "She brought light to my whole world," Byron replied honestly. Grace patted his cheek. "Then you truly understand love." That night, back in their hotel suite, Byron held Florrie close as they stood on their balcony, watching the stars emerge over Table Mountain. "Happy?" he asked, kissing her temple. "Beyond happy." She turned in his arms. "You've made all my dreams come true and given me new ones to dream." He lifted her into his arms, carrying her to their bed. "Let me give you more." Their lovemaking was passionate, a celebration of their commitment. Byron took his time, memorizing every inch of her body with lips and hands. Florrie's sighs and moans were a symphony he conducted with loving expertise. "Byron!" she gasped as he kissed down her body. Her heart raced beneath his lips, its rhythm a song of love and desire. He could feel her pulse quickening, see the flush spreading across her golden skin. The Ice King would have maintained control, would have held back. But Byron was done with control. He gave himself completely to the fire of their passion. Dawn found them still wrapped around each other, satisfied and peaceful. Florrie traced the lines of his face with gentle fingers. "What are you thinking?" she asked. He caught her hand, kissing her palm. "That I'm the luckiest man alive, that you've given me everything I never knew I needed." She smiled, that radiant smile that still made his heart skip. "We've given each other everything, and this is just the beginning." "The beginning of forever," he agreed, pulling her close for another kiss. They spent their last day in Cape Town making plans for the wedding, for their future, for the life they would build together. They would blend their worlds just as they had blended their hearts, creating something unique and beautiful. As their private jet took off the next day, Byron held Florrie's hand, watching Table Mountain disappear beneath the clouds. The Ice King had come to Africa on business. He was leaving as simply a man in love, his heart full of warmth and promise. "Ready to start our next chapter?" Florrie asked, squeezing his hand. Byron kissed her softly. "With you." "I'm ready for anything." The world stretched out before them, full of possibilities, but whatever came next, they would face it together. The Ice King and his queen, two worlds united by a love that had melted walls and built bridges. Their story had started in a New York office, but it would continue across continents, across cultures, across lifetimes. Because when ice meets fire with perfect timing, the result isn't destruction, it's transformation, it's love. It's forever. Chapter 12. Forever. The South African morning dawned bright and clear, perfect for a wedding that would unite two worlds. Byron stood at the window of his suite, already dressed in his tuxedo, watching the final preparations in the garden below. They'd chosen to marry at a historic wine estate outside Cape Town, its colonial architecture blending seamlessly with the wild beauty of the African landscape. Just like their love story, a perfect fusion of different worlds. A knock at the door revealed Luna, already emotional. "Ready to see your bride?" Byron's heart skipped. "Is she?" "She's beautiful." Luna straightened his tie. "And she asked for you." He found Florrie in her bridal suite, standing before a full-length mirror. The sight of her stole his breath. Her wedding dress was a masterpiece of ivory silk and delicate lace, designed to honor both their cultures. Her curls were adorned with traditional African beads that caught the morning light. "You're not supposed to see me before the ceremony," she said, meeting his eyes in the mirror. "Since when do we follow the rules?" He moved behind her, placing his hands on her waist. "You're breathtaking." She turned in his arms, careful of her dress. "I couldn't wait. I needed to see you, to have one moment just for us before we share it with everyone." Byron traced her cheekbone with his thumb. "Having second thoughts about marrying the Ice King?" "Never." She leaned into his touch. "Besides, you're not ice anymore. You're warmth and light and love." He kissed her softly, careful not to smudge her makeup. "Because of you. You changed everything." A knock interrupted them. Grace, looking regal in traditional African dress. "There will be plenty of time for that after the ceremony. Now, out! Let us finish making my granddaughter even more beautiful." Byron kissed Florrie once more, then left to take his place at the altar they'd set up in the garden. Guests were already seated, a mix of corporate power players and African royalty, all united to celebrate their love. The ceremony combined elements of both their cultures. Traditional African drums announced the start, their rhythm matching Byron's heartbeat as he waited for his bride. When Florrie appeared on her grandmother's arm, the world seemed to stop. She literally glowed in the African sunshine, her smile brighter than any diamond. Byron felt tears sting his eyes as she walked toward him. Their vows were personal, spoken from the heart rather than from paper. "Florrie," Byron began, his voice rough with emotion, "before you walked into my office, I was the Ice King, frozen, controlled, alone. You melted my walls with your fire, showed me that real strength lies not in isolation but in connection, in love. You challenge me, support me, make me want to be better. I promise to spend the rest of my life showing you how completely you've changed my world." Tears sparkled in Florrie's eyes as she responded. "Byron, my impossible man, you see me, not just my surface, but my depths. You match my fire with your own passion, hidden so long behind ice. I promise to keep challenging you, supporting you, loving you exactly as you are while helping you become who you want to be. You're not the Ice King anymore. You're simply my heart." They exchanged rings. His a simple platinum band, hers the family heirloom he'd had reset with African diamonds. The kiss that sealed their vows was tender yet passionate, promising forever. The reception was a celebration of their united worlds. African drums mixed with classical music, traditional dances performed alongside contemporary entertainment. Food from both cultures filled the tables, while wine from the estate flowed freely. As the sun set, Byron led Florrie away from the party to a private terrace. "Happy, Mrs. Levi?" "Deliriously." She wound her arms around his neck. "Though I'm keeping winter professionally, can't have people thinking I sleep my way to partnership." He laughed, pulling her closer. "As if anyone who knows you would think that. You're the most brilliant person I know." Smooth talker. She kissed him softly. "I love you, Byron Levi." "I love you, Florrie Winter Levi." He rested his forehead against hers. "Ready to start our forever?" Instead of answering, she kissed him deeply. The kiss quickly became heated, passion igniting between them, as it always did. "We have guests," she gasped, as his lips found her neck. "They won't miss us." He began working on the tiny buttons of her dress. They barely made it to their honeymoon suite, leaving a trail of wedding finery in their wake. Byron took his time undressing his bride, revealing the ivory lingerie beneath her gown that made his mouth go dry. "You're beautiful," he breathed reverently. Florrie's heart raced beneath his touch as he explored familiar territory that somehow felt new. Every sigh, every whisper of his name drove him wild. The Ice King would have maintained control, would have held back, but Byron was done with control. Later, much later, they lay tangled in silk sheets, Florrie's head on his chest, his fingers playing with her curls. The African night was alive with sounds outside their window, but in their private sanctuary, time seemed to stand still. "What are you thinking?" she asked, pressing a kiss to his shoulder. Byron pulled her closer, marveling at how perfectly she fit against him. "That I never want this night to end." "It doesn't have to." She propped herself up to look at him. "We have forever." The kiss that followed was tender, full of promises for their future. They made love again as the moon rose, slower this time, savoring every touch, every taste, every moment of connection. Morning found them on their private terrace, wrapped in robes, watching the African sunrise. Their families would join them for breakfast soon, but for now, it was just them, the former Ice King and the woman who had melted his heart. "Ready for our honeymoon?" Byron asked, kissing her temple. Florrie smiled, that radiant smile that still made his heart skip. 2 weeks in the Maldives, then Paris, then wherever we want. I can't wait." "We could stay here," he suggested, only half joking. "Build our life in Africa." "We'll build our life everywhere." She turned in his arms. "New York, Cape Town, anywhere we want to be, together." As their families arrived for breakfast, Byron held Florrie close, thanking whatever fate had brought her into his office that day. The Ice King was truly gone, replaced by a man who had discovered that real strength lay not in power or control, but in the courage to love completely and without reservation. Their story had started with a merger investigation, but it had become so much more. 2 worlds had united. Ice had melted into fire, and love had proven stronger than any corporate power. The future stretched ahead, full of possibilities. But whatever came next, they would face it together. The Ice King had found his queen, and their reign was just beginning. Forever had never looked so beautiful. A beautiful message and motivation for my family. In the quiet moments when doubts whisper near, remember love's strength that conquers every fear. Like a flower that blooms through concrete and stone, your spirit can flourish when faith has grown. Each sunrise brings promise of dreams taking flight. Each sunset reminds us to hold our love tight. Through storms and through sunshine, through joy and through pain, true hearts keep on beating like soft summer rain. Let kindness flow freely from your soul each day, like starlight that guides weary hearts on their way. For love shared grows stronger with each gentle deed, becoming the light that this world so needs. Remember, dear ones, as you walk life's long road, that burdens grow lighter when shared with your soul. The hand that you offer, the smile that you give, creates ripples of hope, helping others to live. So stand tall and proud with your heart pure and true, for love's greatest magic lives right within you. Each step that you take, each dream that you dare, weaves threads of gold in the love that we share.